Welcome back to the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast, the podcast that goes into the history and development of some of your favorite video games of all time. I'm your host, RxDude22, here with you today. This week, we're going to explore a game that came out on the original Nintendo Entertainment System. It's one of the greatest franchises for this system. We are talking about the original Metroid. Let's dive right into it. Metroid is an action-adventure game developed and published by Nintendo. The first installment in the Metroid series, it was originally released in Japan for the Family Computer Disk System in August of 1986. North America received a release in August 1987 on the Nintendo Entertainment System in the Game Pack ROM cartridge format, with the European release following in January of 1988. Set on the planet Zebes, the story follows Samus Aran as she attempts to retrieve the parasitic Metroid organisms that were stolen by space pirates, who plan to replicate the Metroids by exposing them to beta rays and then use them as biological weapons to destroy Samus and all who oppose them. The game was developed by Nintendo Research and Development 1 and Intelligent Systems. It was produced by Gunpei Yokoi, directed by Satoru Okada and Masaya Yamamoto, and scored by Hirokazu Tanaka. It pioneered the Metroidvania genre, focusing on exploration and searching for power-ups used to reach previously inaccessible areas. Its varied endings for fast completion times made it an early popular title for speedrunning. It was also lauded for being one of the first video games to showcase a female protagonist. Metroid was both a critical and commercial success. Reviewers praised its graphics, soundtrack, and tight controls. Nintendo Power ranked it 11th on their list of the best games for a Nintendo console. On Top 100 Games list, it was ranked 7th by Game Informer and 69th by Electronic Gaming Monthly. The game has been released multiple times onto other Nintendo systems, such as the Game Boy Advance in 2004, the Wii, Wii U, and 3DS via the Virtual Console service, and the Nintendo Switch via its online service. An enhanced remake of Metroid featuring updated visuals and gameplay, Metroid Zero Mission, was released for the Game Boy Advance in 2004. Some information about gameplay. Metroid is an action-adventure game in which the player controls Samus Aran in sprite-rendered two-dimensional landscapes. The game takes place on the fictional planet of Zebes, a large, open-ended world with areas connected by doors and elevators. The player controls Samus as she travels through the planet's caverns and hunts space pirates. She begins with a weak power beam as her only weapon, and with only the ability to jump. The player explores more areas and collects power-ups that grant Samus special abilities and enhance her armor and weaponry, allowing her to enter areas that were previously inaccessible. Among the power-ups that are included in the game are the Morph Ball, which allows Samus to curl into a ball to roll into tunnels, the Bomb, which can only be used while in ball form and can open hidden floor wall paths, and the Screw Attack, a somersaulting move that destroys enemies in its path. In addition to common enemies, Samus encounters two bosses, Kraid and Ridley, whom she must defeat in order to progress. Ordinary enemies typically yield additional energy or ammunition when destroyed, and the player can increase Samus's carrying capacities by finding storage tanks and defeating bosses. Once Kraid and Ridley have both been defeated, the player can shoot their statues to open the path to the final area and confront the Mother Brain. Plot of the game. In the year 20X5, the space pirates attacked a Galactic Federation-owned space research vessel and see samples of Metroid creatures, the parasitic life forms discovered on the planet SR-388. Dangerous floating organisms, the Metroids can latch onto any organism and drain its life energy to kill it. The space pirates plan to replicate Metroids by exposing them to beta rays and then using them as biological weapons to destroy all living beings that oppose them. While searching for the stolen Metroids, the Galactic Federation locates the space pirates' base of operations on the planet Zebes. The Federation assaults the planet, but the pirates resist, forcing the Federation to retreat. As a last resort, the Federation decides to send a lone bounty hunter to penetrate the pirates' base and destroy Mother Brain, the biomechanical life form that controls the space pirate's fortress and its defenses. Considered the greatest of all bounty hunters, Samus Aran is chosen for the mission. Samus lands her gunship on the surface of Zebes and explores the planet, traveling through the planet's caverns, finding upgrades like missiles, energy tanks, the morph ball, bomb, screw attack, and ice beam, and uses these weapons to dispatch the alien creatures who get in her way. She comes across Kraid, an ally of the space pirates, and Ridley, the space pirates' commander, and defeats them both. Eventually, Samus kills the Metroids and finds and destroys Mother Brain. A time bomb goes off to destroy the lair, and Samus is able to escape before it explodes. Development. After Nintendo's release of commercially successful platforming games in the 1980s, including Donkey Kong in 1981, Ice Climber in 1985, Super Mario Bros. 1985, and the critically acclaimed adventure game The Legend of Zelda in 1986, the company began work on an action game. The word Metroid is a portmanteau of the words Metro and Android. It was co-developed by Nintendo's Research and Development 1 Division and Intelligent Systems, and produced by Gunpei Yokoi. Metroid was directed by Satoru Okada and Masao Yamamoto, credited as Yamamoto, and featured music written by Hirokazu Tanaka, credited as Hip Tanaka. The scenario was created by Makoto Kano, credited with his last name, and character design was done by Hiroji Koyataki, credited with his last name. Hirofumi Matsuaku, and Yoshio Sakamoto. The character design for Samus Aran was created by Kiyotaki. The production was described as a, quote, very free working environment by Tanaka, who stated that being the composer, he also gave input for the graphics and helped naming areas. Partway through development, one of the developers asked the others, "Hey, wouldn't that be kind of cool if it turned out that this person inside the suit was a woman?" The idea was incorporated in the game, though the English language instruction manual for the game uses only the pronoun he in reference to Samus. Ridley Scott's 1979 horror film Alien was described by Sakamoto as a huge influence after the game's world had been created. The development staff was affected by the work of the film's creature designer, H.R. Geiger, and found his creation to be fitting for the theme. Still, there were problems that threatened timely progress and eventually led Sakamoto to be forcefully asked to participate by his superiors, hoping his previous experience could help the team. Sakamoto stated he figured out a way to bypass the limited resources and time to leverage existing game media assets, quote, to create variation and an exciting experience. Nintendo attempted to distinguish Metroid from other games by making it a non-linear adventure-based game, in which exploration was a crucial part of the experience. The game often requires that the player retrace steps to progress, forcing the player to scroll the screen in all directions, as with most contemporary games. Metroid is considered one of the first video games to impress a feeling of desperation and solitude on the player. Following The Legend of Zelda, Metroid helped pioneer the idea of acquiring tools to strengthen characters and help progress through the game. Until then, most ability-enhancing power-ups like the Power Shot and Gauntlet and the Starman and Super Mario Bros. Offer only temporary boosts to characters, and they are not required to complete the game. In Metroid, however, items are permanent fixtures that lasted until the end. In particular, missiles and the ice beam are required to finish the game. After defeating Mother Brain, the game presents one of 5 ending scenes based on the time to completion. Metroid is one of the first games to contain multiple endings. In the 3rd, 4th, and 5th endings, Samus Aran appears without her suit and for the first time reveals herself to be a woman. In Japan, the disc card media used by the Famicom Disk System allows players up to 3 different save game slots in Metroid, similar to The Legend of Zelda in the West. Use of an internal battery to manage files was not fully realized in time for Metroid's international release. The Western versions of Metroid use a password system that was new to the industry at the time, in which players write down a 24-letter code and re-enter it into the game when they wish to continue a previous session. Codes also allow for cheats, such as NARPAS Sword and Justin Bailey. Music. Tanaka said he wanted to make a score that made players feel like they were encountering a living organism and had no distinction between music and sound effects. The only time a melodic theme is heard is when Mother Brain is defeated in order to give the victorious player catharsis. During the rest of the game, the melodies are more minimalistic because Tanaka wanted the soundtrack to be the opposite of the hummable pop tunes found in other games at the time. Release. Officially defined as a side-scrolling shooter video game, Metroid was released by Nintendo for the Famicom Disk System in Japan on August 6, 1986. An arcade version of the game was released in August 1986 as part of Nintendo's Play Choice 10. It was released on the Nintendo Entertainment System a year later on August 15, 1987 in North America and on January 15, 1988 in Europe. Emulation. The game was re-released several times via emulation, linking the Game Boy Advance game Metroid Fusion with the GameCube's Metroid Prime using a link cable unlocks the full version of Metroid on the GameCube. The game is unlocked as a bonus upon completion of Metroid Zero Mission. A standalone version of Metroid for the Game Boy Advance, part of the classic NES series collection, was released in Japan on August 10, 2004, in North America on October 25, 2004, and in Europe on January 7, 2005. The game arrived on the Wii's Virtual Console in Europe and North America in 2007, and in Japan on March 4, 2008. Metroid was re-released for the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console on March 1, 2012. At E3 2010, Nintendo featured Metroid among NES and SNES games in a tech demo called Classic Games, to be released for the Nintendo 3DS. Nintendo America President Reggie Fils-Aimé said, quote, "Not to think of them as remakes." Miyamoto said that these classics might be using, quote, "new features in the games that would take advantage of the 3DS's capabilities." This was released as part of 3D Classic series, which does not include Metroid. Metroid was a commercial success, reported to be famous and very popular by 1989. As of 2004, 2.73 million units of Metroid have been sold worldwide. All this information came from Wikipedia. Let's check out the game for a few minutes and show you some of the gameplay of Metroid. And that brings episode 6 to a close of the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast. We're a weekly podcast here on YouTube that goes into the history and development of some of the greatest video games of all time. We have additional content here on YouTube as well. We have a monthly Hall of Fame podcast, and we have gameplay videos throughout the week. You can catch live additional content from me over on Twitch at twitch.com/Classic and Current Gaming. We'll be back next week with another game here on the podcast. It's been RxDude22 from Classic and Current Gaming signing out. Keep on gaming. See you on the next stream. Be good to each other. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.